All right, we're here. We're back. We're going to look at the Week 4 NFL recap. We're going to start with the Bengals, Panthers. Bengals back to winning. Maybe the playoffs are in the picture this year.
Yeah, they're 1-3 now. I don't know whether they're gonna make the playoffs this year. Still with the Steelers and with the Ravens, two games for both of those, home and away, still left on their schedule, and both teams looking really good. So I don't know whether they're gonna be able to make the playoffs this year, but they definitely looked far better here against the Panthers. But still, Dalton, despite the loss, looks good. So I expect him to start next week against the Bears, especially since I don't think that's the game you want to bring Young back into against the tough Bears defense. But possibly after that, if they lose to the Bears, then I could see Young coming back into this offense.
Yeah, I think Bryce Young, he needs another chance.
100%, yeah, 100%.
Saints, Falcons. Falcons come away with the win. The Saints fall off. They looked really good coming out. But yeah,
Yeah, strong 2-0 start for the Saints, high scoring team after the first 2 weeks, but they're coming back down to earth, man. Kamara and Olave nonetheless had big weeks for them, but they're not that team. We thought they were going to be a contender maybe after the first 2 weeks, but it was just poor defense that they were playing against. Falcons still though, despite the win, they're not the same offense that we expected coming into this year. We expected them to be a high volume, high scoring team. We're seeing that week in week out, players like Pitts, like this week, just they don't get used in this offense. We thought that was just an Arthur Smith thing. Maybe Pitts isn't as good as we first projected a couple of years ago.
yeah. Then looking ahead, Broncos, Jets. Really just a horrible game. Nothing going on.
Yeah, complete snooze fest. Broncos come away with a 10-9 victory. It was so bad that the Broncos QB Bo Nix had 65 all-purpose yards. That was it, and they still managed to come away with a win. Jets are now falling to 2-2, and they've lost some pretty poor games. You don't want to, you can't lose to a team like the Broncos. Broncos are now also 2-2, so I don't know. But Bo Nix doesn't look great, but they're coming away with wins nonetheless. It's this defense that's carrying.
Yeah, and then Jaguars, Texans, CJ Stroud, really good game. Looked really good. What do I say about that?
Yeah, he's looking like himself. Texans moved to 3-1. This is the Texans team we expected to see. Um, but moving on to the Jaguars, ETN comes out hurt in this game. He does come back in later, but Tank Bigsby goes for 9 carries, or 7 carries, sorry, for 90 yards. Big game from him. We could see a split backfield going forward now. But the Jags moved to 0-4, and I don't know where you go if you're this team. They're not the same team that we expected coming into the season with how electric this offense was supposed to be.
Um, Vikings, Packers. I mean, what do we think?
I mean, are the Vikings the real deal? We're looking at a team now 4-0, but I still don't know. This team was 20. They scored 28 in the first half, and they finished the game with 31. It was a really poor performance that second half for this Vikings offense. But it was also poor from the Packers. The Packers were started off the season 0-1, and then Malik Willis comes in, brings them to 2-1, and then we expected Love coming back in here that they were gonna get the win against the Vikings and go back to being contenders. But we just saw Love chucking it up the field with three ints. I mean, I don't know what he was doing, but yeah, it's a weird game. Vikings looked really good in the first half, not so great in the second half, and the Packers looked bad. But despite that, they made it a close game in the end.
Um, yeah, I mean, again, I agree. The Vikings, they were kind of falling off there in the second half. They were starting to fade out. So I don't
Mhm.
know if that was just, they got the lead and they were happy with it. But either way, I do think that that's a team that, they're 4-0, but who knows really how good they'll be by the later weeks.
100%.
And then Colts, Steelers, injury for Richardson. Flacco looked good coming back on, which is a surprise.
Yeah,
Let's talk about it.
yeah, it was funny. Richardson gets hurt. We're going to talk about that in the injury report later on. But Flacco cooked. Steelers getting some PTSD from back in his Ravens days. But the Steelers D just didn't look good today. We thought that the Steelers were probably the pick coming into this 3-0 and how good that defense looked. I thought that they were going to really cook today against the Richardson that, I mean, he threw a lot of picks recently, but he comes out hurt and Flacco's secure on that bowl and they get the W. But the Steelers seemed like they were forcing the run in that fourth quarter, fourth quarter. They went back to back to back TDs with Justin Fields, um, and they were throwing the ball more. And I think they need to trust the ball in the hands of Fields more. But I think this is just it's an Arthur Smith offense. They're always going to run this ball, but I think they need to trust Fields more going into the future.
I agree. And then Rams Bears. Uh, it's looking like the injuries is really starting to show for the Rams.
Yeah, man, they got a win last week against the 49ers to go to 1-2, and no one was expecting that. No Puka, no Cup. An O line that is completely in shambles, but they look more like the offense that we expected against that 49ers team against the Bears. Caleb looks better. He goes 17 for 23, 157 yards, one TD. It's still not what you expect of your first overall pick, especially in the offense that he's coming into. But I think one thing that's really exciting for this Bears team is Swift looks far, far better in the RB that he expected to pick up in free agency. 16 carries, 93 yards, and one TD. It's just far, far better from Swift, especially compared to those first three games. I mean, he was horrendous in those first three, but a big win for the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of Caleb's passes. They're short passes. He's not going for big yards.
No, no, no. Not especially not compared to what he was doing the first couple of games.
No, and then Eagles, Bucks, Hurts, Smith. What do we think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone really picked the Eagles coming into this game. No AJ Brown, no Devonta Smith. We knew that Hurts was going to struggle, but he really struggled in this game. It's tough. You miss your wide receiver one, your wide receiver two. I mean, their wide receiver one coming into this game was Paris Campbell. Are we like that's you can't compete against the Bucs side led by Baker, but Baker nonetheless played extremely good, 347 yards, two TDs, and Evans showing that he's still on the top. He's a top 12 wide receiver right now, maybe even top 10. This guy's he could break the another 1,000 yard season.
Yeah. Patriots, 49ers. 49ers getting a win. What does that mean for them?
Yeah, it's big. I mean, coming off of a really bad loss against the Rams, you can't lose when you're up by 21 points, and they somehow found a way to do that last week. But they're back here, and it was in big part to Mason going for over 160 yards all purpose. I mean, I think the question we have to start asking ourselves is any RB really like are they just going to be good in this 49ers offense by Shanahan? Because I mean, of course, CMC is just one of the best running backs in the league right now, but he's hurt. But Mason's coming. He's done an extremely good job. And before that, it was Elijah Mitchell. So I think we're looking at a 49ers team that any RB can thrive in this system. But Juwan Jennings comes back to earth after that stellar performance against the Rams. And then I think as for the Patriots, I think you got to start asking yourself, when does Drake May come into this team? With Jacoby Brissett, it's another poor performance. I know the 49ers are an extremely good defense, but I think that Gerard Mayo needs to start thinking about, maybe it's time to bring in Drake May and start giving him a chance.
Yeah, offensively, Patriots have a lot to work on.
Oh, yeah. They're not great.
And then Commanders, Cardinals. Daniels looked really good on the ground.
Yeah, elite on the ground and in the air. I mean, he went 26 for 30. We saw last week against the Bengals. He broke the completion record of rookies for all time. But Daniels looks really elite. He could win Offensive Rookie of the Year. But this run game for the Commanders, 216 yards on the ground and 4 TDs. They look dangerous on that ground. This is a Commanders ground game without Austin Eckler this week as well. They're running with their RB1 Brian Robinson and then their RB2 or RB3, who still managed to get a TD on a really fluky run off to the left. But the Cards offense still seem to be missing something. No Trey McBride this week, ruled out via concussion. But I mean, when you only have Marv to throw to, there's going to be problems. But James Conner again going for 100 yards and a TD, so the run game still looks good for the Cardinals.
Chief Chargers, no surprise. Chiefs come away with the win.
Yeah, but it wasn't a great win. There's a big Rice injury. We're going to talk about that in a second as well. We're getting closer to that injury report. But they looked really, really bad, this Chiefs team. Kelsey does look back. Mahomes is not quite there yet. He's not the Mahomes we saw last year. They're 4-0 now, though, nonetheless, which is scary in and of itself that this Chiefs team's riddled with injuries is still 4-0. They're beating everyone either way. And I think looking at the Chargers, it's if this run game can't start up with J.K. Dobbins, then I don't know where they go. Harbor seems like this run game just opens up the offense, and if they can't get that run game going, then they're not going to win games. Herbert's an elite passer, but the way that Harbaugh is running this offense, that is they need the run game to start going if they're going to win a game.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to win games you can't run.
Exactly. Yeah.
Browns Raiders. Raiders get it done.
Yeah. I mean, Minshew continues to get it done despite how bad he continues to play. They have no Devonte Adams this week, no Max Crosby. Max Crosby would have run all over the Browns this week, I believe. With no, the Browns are playing both their backup tackles, left and right. So I think if Crosby comes into this game, it's game over. But the Raiders moved to 2-2. But as for the Browns, I don't know where you go. Cooper again looks really bad, and Nick Chubb could come back this season, but with how bad the Browns are playing right now, I don't know what you do. Do you tank for the number for a possible pick in the draft going QB? There's a lot of good QBs that could be coming out. Cam Ward, Quinn Ewers, Shedeur Sanders. But if you do you look to move on from these vets like Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, and it's going to have to be done before the trade deadline. And there's some possible teams out there that could be looking at these guys.
Yeah, I mean, do you think Deshaun Watson has kind of any path to success? Come back to maybe looking like he did when he was on the Texans, or is that just not even a possibility at this point?
I just don't think that he comes back to where he was. I mean, we've seen little snippets of it on this Browns team where everyone's like, okay, that's the Deshaun Watson we remember. But I mean, he just doesn't look the same. He's got Jerry Jeudy and he's got Amari Cooper. He has no real excuses of targets. I mean, those are far better than what he had at the Texans. So
Yep. And then Bills Ravens. Ravens win.
yeah, dominant fashion, a big win for the Ravens to move 2-2, and they knock off the undefeated Bills for them to move 3-1. Bills just don't look like the same team that they were last week, where I mean, last week the Bills were insane. Josh Allen was pulled in the third quarter, so it was kind of a similar thing where Lamar Jackson was pretty much pulled like in the fourth quarter here. But I think the big takeaway from this game is the Ravens could be the best rushing team in the league. They go for 271 yards as a team, and I think it's finally because they've clicked with Henry. Henry goes 24 carries, 199 yards, and 1 TD. And I think they've figured out how to properly use him in this offense. And that's really scary. When you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in that backfield, it's gonna be trouble for whoever they play in the come playoffs time, because I think this Ravens team could win the division.
Yeah, and there was a lot of speculation about how good Henry was going to be as he had some poor performances, but obviously it looks like they figured him out.
Yeah, the age doesn't look like it's affecting him. He's a unicorn.
Injury report. This is big. A lot of big losses for a lot of teams. One that's not on there yet, but could be something. Looked like it might have happened with Allen's arm.
Yeah, we weren't able to get it in there, but we'll talk about it real quick. Josh Allen had a weird fumble in that third quarter. They were going down. Game's kind of close, and he rotated back to throw the ball, and I don't remember what defensive player it was for the Ravens, but he knocked down his arm. Josh Allen looked like he was kind of trying to rustle it off on the sideline, but he then came back in, lost the ball, and then he was substituted out by Mitch Trubisky for the rest of the game. But it'll be interesting how they deal with that. He's had some elbow issues in the past.
Yeah, I don't. That's what's concerning is that he's got a history of injuries in that spot. So
Exactly.
that's something to look at for sure. Bengals though, they missed Trey Hendrickson, neck injury, halfway through the game, left the stadium in a sling.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big loss. Bengals defense already wasn't looking great, especially last week against the Commanders. They didn't even force a turnover or punt. But to lose Trey Hendrickson, they still came away with the win. But then again, it's against the Carolina Panthers. It's not looking great if he left the stadium in a sling. So we'll see. Keep updated on that throughout the week.
Yeah, and then this one definitely the worst injury I think this week for sure.
100%.
Uh, Tyler. So Tyler Batty, worst injury we've seen for sure this week. Really scary. Got carted off the field. Really bad look.
Yeah, it was weird. He came over to the sideline and then kind of had like a weird fall over. I'm not 100% sure on exactly what happened on that sideline, but he was carted off the field, and Sean Payton refuses to answer questions on how he's doing. That's not something you want to see. Tyler Batty obviously isn't a big part of this running back scene in Denver with Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin both ahead of him. But you never like to see a guy coming off the field like that.
Yeah, and then Rashi Rice, bad knee injury. And what's interesting about this one is that Patrick Mahomes caused this. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, Rashi Rice comes away with a big injury, bad injury. But yeah, it was closed off a pick by Patrick Mahomes, an overthrown ball to Travis Kelsey along the left side of the field. And then when Rashi Rice is coming back, he forces a fumble, punching it out of the safety's hands. But then Patrick Mahomes decides to dive at the legs of the Charger player, misses them, and then hits Rashi Rice's leg, almost hyperextending it. Um, Andy Reid's has come out and said that the news looked not good at halftime, and we're looking at a possible torn ACL here. Worst case scenario, best case scenario, we're looking at some sort of hyperextension in the knee, but this is looking pretty bad. We'll know more tomorrow as he has an MRI set to take place, but we'll see.
Two injuries for the Colts this week. Richardson, he came into the game with his hip a little messed up.
Mm.
Played, had a little injury, came off, then came back in, uh, and then left again. So yeah, I mean that's something to be worried about. I mean hopefully he's good, but you never know with the hip.
Yeah, Richardson's had problems in the past, especially last year with these runs coming into the end zone and just in general play and getting hit and not really sliding. But yeah, he took a shot, a helmet to the hip in the game, and it tweaked him. Joe Flacco came in. He went 3 plays. They went down to the red zone. They were on around the 5 or 6 yard line. They decided to sub Richardson back in, and they decided to go with a run play for Richardson, where he would then get hit in the exact same spot on the hip again. I don't know what the coaching staff was thinking. Though it does look good, it just looks to be some sort of hip bruise for Anthony Richardson. It's still something to continue to look at on this Colts team, whether they continue to let Richardson run with this ball.
Yeah, he did walk off, which is good news.
Mhm.
It's not a dislocation. Hopefully nothing's torn in there, but he could have sprained a different ligament that's in his hip, so that's
Mhm.
something that could possibly put him out next week, but he probably will be good. Jonathan Taylor, ankle. He said he's good after the game, but we'll just see. High ankle sprains, they can take time, so he may not be there next week.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor gets hurt really late in this game. It was some sort of ankle problem when he came down on the football. Someone landed on it. He said he was good after the game. Said he was ready to build off this win and going into next week another tough opponent. But then it was later confirmed to be a high ankle sprain. He has a history of these where these are very long. The high ankle sprains are long injuries, but for Jonathan Taylor, they're even longer. He's had high ankle sprains in the past, and they've lasted more than the 4 weeks they usually do. It'll be something to keep an eye on. I don't know whether Jonathan Taylor was just saying that he was good after the game, just because that's what you're supposed to do. But a high ankle sprain does mean missed time, so I expect Jonathan Taylor not to be playing next week.
Yeah, and then Packers, they're going to lose wide receiver Christian Watson. Ankle sprain again, could possibly be a high ankle sprain.
Yeah, Christian Watson with a really weird injury in the middle of the field. Originally, it was thought to be some sort of knee thing. The cornerback landed on his knee, his ankle at the same time. His knee kind of twisted in a weird direction along with his ankle. It's come out to be a high ankle sprain for Christian Watson. We're expecting he was carted off the field. We're expecting an IR stint for Christian Watson for sure. But that's it. That's the injury report. That's the week 4 recap. Thank you guys for tuning in.